Welcome to the BioNexus Health podcast with Dr. Jodie Dashore, who holds a PhD in integrative medicine, is board certified in integrative pediatrics, an internationally recognized pioneering clinician, and author. And now here's your host of BioNexus Health podcast, Dr. Jodie Dashore.
All right, Andrea. So once again, that was a very interesting discussion. We have been taking a deep dive into so many questions, and those watching, this is part 3 now, right? So keep in mind that these are questions coming from parents of children newly diagnosed with autism, and I'm really impressed that such scientific and correctly formulated questions are coming from parents, which is just hats off for trying to do your research and gather information. So hey, Andrea, you and I are both still here.
Yes, of course. On duty still.
On duty, yes. I mean, it's God's work, so I'm happy, and I know you are as well.
I'm super, super happy.
Yes. So go ahead with your next question.
My next question was actually related to is autism genetic? Because it's a theory we hear sometimes, and actually you just brought this up in the comments you made on my last question. Many families are very much scared to go for another child once they have one, which is on the autism spectrum, and I just wanted you to share your views on that. And part of my question was also what would you advise these parents to do? But I think it was a bit already explained in the previous question. The mom should definitely investigate herself and treat whatever she finds.
Yes. So is autism genetic?
Genetic, yeah.
Right. There is a high incidence of having a second child on the autism spectrum, not necessarily at the same level of autism. Like, if your first child is level 3, doesn't mean that your second child will be the same. Right? It could be level 1. Now, autism spectrum, it's a spectrum. So you could have a child, the first child, for example, or even the second child, it could be any different variations, that if your child is nonverbal, for example, if one of your children is nonverbal, doesn't mean that the second child will also be. Another child may just have ADHD, may just end up with, sensory problems, may just have combination, like oppositional defiant or sensory problems or ADD, ADHD, hyperlexia. So these are different issues that are seen on the spectrum. And yes, it can occur in families, which is where, for those of you who want to understand what Andrea said in her question about our prior discussion, remember to visit Part 1 and Part 2 of this discussion series that we are having with Andrea, and answering questions from many different parents in Europe. So I think you said, how do we, is there any kind of prevention?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
It is also seen that if the sibling is a boy, then the chances, unfortunately, are higher than if the sibling is a girl. There are various factors. If your living arrangements are environmental compromise, and then you move for the next pregnancy, you're in a much better environmental situation. If the mother's health, for whatever reason, is much better, then of course, that impacts the results on the pregnancy. Like, if you have a mom, say you moved from a moldy place into a well-constructed new house unknowingly, you didn't know
Yes.
that caused the autism in your first child. you moved into a nice clean space. There is, you're out in the country, there's fresh air, etc. And then mom, for whatever reason, something happened. She got like big infection, so she had to go in, be on antibiotics for a long time until the bronchitis got better or whatever, right? And then coincidentally, she got pregnant soon after. So these are a lot of coincidences that can happen where a child can not have something, as being fully on the spectrum, as being nonverbal, but may just have other issues. So there are various factors involved, but yes, there are research studies that show that autism can be in multiple siblings in the same family. I mean, I've got several families in my practice as well that mom for the third child, like I mentioned earlier,
Yes.
has been able to achieve some kind of neurotypical results, right? Now, there is nothing wrong with being neurodivergent. It's beautiful. I'm glad that the world is accepting all different kinds of normals. I've always said that you have to accept your new normal. We've accepted our new normal with my son as well, but not at the expense of pain and suffering.
I totally agree with you. Like, I don't have a problem my child being different as long as I know that he's not suffering physically in any way, because Arthur had been through a lot of physical sufferance, as you may recall.
Yes, that's exactly it, and that is why it is important to welcome the neurodiversity. Beautiful. However, if there is pain and suffering involved, and if there is nonverbal pain and suffering involved, neurodivergence, you have to understand that being socially different, emotionally different is okay, but being violent and aggressive and it's just self-harming.
Yes, or harming your mother.
Or harming your mother. That should not be it should not be misdiagnosed or misinterpreted as neurodivergence. If your child needs to be in a straitjacket, just to live a life, no, that is not a safe and productive life for anyone. Your child should not have to be drugged with antipsychotics, risperidone, da da da. No, please investigate what is causing pain and suffering in your child. What is causing these emotional anger outbursts? Some of the parents, when they run the labs and they look at what's going on in the child and they read up, oh my God, it is major streptococcus in the gut. Go read up. What kind of pain and suffering streptococcus, this level of streptococcus in the gut is causing? And what if it was you? Would you be happy, lucky, loving, hugging, kissing? No, you would be screaming and headbanging as well. So don't accept violence, self-harming, harming others, in nonverbal children as neurodivergence. It's just not fair to the child. At least run the labs. That is, I would really request, parents to do that, to, in a humane manner for your child. It's just a matter of being humane. It's not a
And
matter
also
of,
towards themselves, Dr. Dashore.
and towards
Because
themselves, yes.
what's the life of a mother who raised a child by sacrificing herself, and then when the child is older, she will be beaten up on a daily basis, but her own child. This is not a life to live, honestly.
Mothers especially, honestly, as mothers get older and we go through perimenopause, which can be up to 10 years before menopause.
Yes.
And when we go through menopause, nobody understands what women go through.
Yeah.
It is very difficult that, I mean, there are hormonal disruptions, yes, Andrea, there are estrogen receptors in almost every cell in the human body for females. And when I say females, let me just be politically correct, those born with a XX chromosome.
Okay.
Okay, so those born with an XX chromosome, when you go through perimenopause and menopause, it is a lot of silent suffering, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of psychological ups and downs because of hormonal dysregulation. Estrogen is on the decline. Your, organs are drying up. There's so many things going on, like things like frozen shoulders, things like hemorrhoids, things like, your interest is gone, your libido is gone, your joy for life is gone, and you're trying to keep the marriage together. You're trying to keep your,
A
what do you
job,
call it?
trying to keep your job, and then also you need to, on top of everything,
Look
to
after your child.
yes.
Right. So it is important for mothers to be kind to yourselves. In fact, one of the programs that I'm going to start in January is hormonal regulation in peri and menopause. Hormonal support and for women going through I would say herbal hormonal support for women going through perimenopause and menopause. That is very much needed. Everyone will need literally their own customized herbal blend
Yes.
for
Yes, that's
each
a great
woman.
idea.
So that's what we are
It's
doing.
good to know. It's good to know you're preparing that, Dr. Dashore.
Yes.
I would like to move on to a more sensitive question this time. Let's discuss a bit the GB jabbers. On many, many forums in the social media, parents are wondering whether this have an influence or not in the future of their children.
Yes.
Does a weak immune system contribute to a stronger reaction? Why do two brothers react differently to the same GB jabber?
Right. Since we are jibber jabbering, let's jibber jabber on a little bit more. So yes, I have twins and triplets in my practice, and everyone's lab results are different. And each of them responds differently to their treatment. They all have their customized dosage based on what we find in the labs. So the response is different. The die-off reactions, the detox reactions are different. The recovery and repair is different. The progress is different. We've seen one example I remember, beautiful triplets from amazing family in Chicago. And one is completely mainstreamed. Next one is almost mainstreamed. And the last one of them is, pretty much lagging behind, moderately so. They're triplets, right?
Yeah.
Same environment, same. So that is, again, spiritually thinking, I've always thought about this as well. Spiritually, it's a different soul.
Yes, indeed.
So it's anyways, the body is different, the physiology, the biochemistry, the organs that are affected, the development of the immune system, what kind of an impact the autism has had on the development of various systems. Even neurotypical children develop at varying paces, right? You have some children whose motor skills develop before their neurological. They are like walking right? Before the fine motor develops. And some of them are actually babbling before they can ever walk. So these are normal in nature to have these developmental predominances, differences in children. So based on these individual physiological and biochemical developmental differences in children, when children go through gibbering, jabbering, you will see the reactions are different, right? Depending on how many all at once, if you know what I mean, right? And depending on the maturity of the immune system, depending on, of course, environmental toxins, even depending on the environment in the physician's office.
Yeah,
That
lots of
can
things, lots of
impact
things to
the
consider
baby.
when you are a parent and you don't really like know all these details. And also like some of us do not really have a choice. I mean, you are imposed to go on a specific day when your child has this
It's
specific
scheduled,
age,
etc.,
you
right?
know.
Yes,
I
yes.
remember in the case of my son Arthur, I had to go and do one of this when my son had been on a week of 39 degrees of fever. And then the doctor told me, well, it's okay. He measured his temperature and he's like, no, today he's a bit lower. And I think anyway, we should not miss the schedule because it's very important. And I remember how much Arthur suffered after that vaccine. And I still remember very vividly.
Hassan, I just, here is where we would need to take a cut, right? The previous one sentence had to be cut out. So, the word vaccine shouldn't be there, okay? So I'm going to take a 5-second pause and we are going to start again. So please delete that part. Oh, sorry for the interruption. I had to grab my pen real quick, but you were saying that, Arthur was given this treatment in spite of a high fever.
Yes,
And
exactly.
then
He had
he
been sick that
reacted.
that particular week, and we had to go for the treatment in that specific day. And the doctor strongly advised us not to miss it. And I honestly think that that really wasn't good for him because he had a very strong reaction to the treatment. But yeah, as a parent, you don't always have the choice, I'm afraid.
That is true. That is true. Sometimes the various, jibber jabbers and treatments are required for school.
Yes,
Right. So
kindergarten, yes.
correct. Yes, kindergarten, etc. And sometimes there is no choice. So, if you have like 5 sessions of treatments scheduled in the same day, some of the things you can do, there is the BioNexus immune support and treatment detoxification program that can be used right after to support your immune system, if you know what I mean, and to detoxify right after any of the strong treatments that pediatricians will tell you it's important. But sometimes you have to go in with some immune support after that. So we do have that. Additionally, waiting as long as possible. If your child has any kind of special needs, or if your child has a weak immune system, then waiting as long as possible for any mandatory treatments to be done. And instead of doing 4 or 5 sessions in a day, just do one session, wait 4 months, do another session, wait another 4 months, and then do another jibber jabber session. That can be helpful as well. Now, after a session, come back and do, and this will apply to you as well, if in the future, if something like this comes up with Arthur, and obviously, as they get better and better, right, cognitively, speech and language,
Yes.
you want to give them educational opportunities, but then, these are the requirements from these educational centers or institutions that you need to fulfill. So, we can use the BioNexus protocols for immune support and detox help, if any treatment is mandated at that point, so
Oh,
that's something that can be done. Yeah. So
that's good. That's great to know, because indeed,
patients.
who knows what the future might bring.
Exactly, yes. So that's absolutely there. And some treatments, most of these type of jibby-jabby treatments can be very toxic. And, we have seen major immune reactions in children, especially autistic children or anywhere on the spectrum children, that research shows have mitochondrial problems, have immune dysregulation, gut dysregulation. So, treatments can have an adverse effect, sometimes even overnight. Like, I've seen video recordings of children that were, singing the happy birthday song or trying to babble along, and 2 days later.
This actually happened to Arthur. Arthur was just starting to say mama and dada. Then from one day to the other, he became mute for a few years.
Yes, yes. I've even seen actual, neurotypical children, when offered various treatments and, everything seems okay, but few days, a couple weeks later, they end up with the selective mutism. And selective mutism is a diagnosis. It's a DSM diagnosis where it is selective, that, the anxiety is extremely high, the social anxiety, that they can speak only in front of either mom or dad, or, so that's underlying, what shall I say, treatment toxicity, or extreme reaction to the treatments they've received, and then complicated with mold, biotoxins, PANS,
Yeah.
yeah. So this happens to even neurotypical children, and I've seen so many of them recover from the selective mutism.
I would like to now ask you a few questions about the struggles that our autistic children are confronted with. Sensory issues, poor communication skills. Over 30% of them are nonverbal. Some of them are physically affected, like Brian and Arthur, on top of everything else. I was wondering, like, what are these coming from? What is the underlying cause of this? And most important, when we manage to treat the condition, will they actually manage to recover and, let's say, become verbal? What is on your experience in your clinic that happened to children like that?
Children that are having physical problems, right? Is that the focus of this question? Children who have.
Well, if you want, maybe we can make it like differently, because indeed I kind of mixed things, and I know that it's completely different. So on one hand, we have the children who are experiencing also physical problems. On the other hand, we have the one who are experiencing lots of sensory issues,
Yes.
or communication skills, some of them remaining nonverbal. So yeah, maybe you can differentiate.
Yes. Honestly, no, I don't think we need to differentiate, because the underlying logic, when it comes to investigating what medical conditions could be underlying our children, that remains the same. it is very important to investigate when there's any kind of disruption in the typical neurological, psychological, emotional, social, physical development of a child. Unless there is any obvious conditions like, rickets or fracture or, Paget's disease or something that obviously impacts the joints, the bones, that can be treated. But if there is no reason or, no known reason that you're being given for physical problems, let's go with physical first. Physical problems with your child, like why is Brian's leg paralyzed? What the heck? I mean, it's not associated with autism. Why is he getting vocal tics? Why is he getting motor tics? Why are the eyes blinking? The head is shaking. Anytime he comes near any kind of electrical appliance, the eyes start blinking. This is not autism. I mean, what is going on? That's when we ran the basic labs, complete nonsense. We had 10 false negatives. Why does he have excruciating pain? Then we heard about specialized labs that I run now. And then we got this underlying diagnosis. So bottom line, if there is a physical issue, right? If there is a musculoskeletal issue, if there is a gross motor, a neurodevelopmental problem, 1000% investigate infections. Not toxins, infections. Okay, that's it. Now, if there is sensory issues, if there is language delays, right? Especially if these symptoms are coming together. You have a child that is aggressive, explosive, self-harm, harming others, is nonverbal, right? Always seems to be frustrated, has difficulty with transitioning, is hyperactive. He's trying to tell you something, for crying out loud. He's nonverbal. I don't know. I always end up, getting emotional, but don't listen to the typical picture that people paint about autistic children, right? Oh, they are hyperactive. They are going to be. There are some that are going to be aggressive. There are some. Do you understand the high level of anxiety that comes when the brain is on fire? Your own immune system is sending antibodies to attack the brain. And there is, the human body has no automatic defense against that. If there is an infection, of course, the body has a defense. What is it? Your immune system. If there is a toxin, again, defense system is your immune system. But if the army is attacking the same country, if the army is attacking the citizens of their own country, what does one do? So that is where it is important to investigate and look if there are any of the other conditions that I spoke in part 1 and part 2 that are mimicking the symptoms of autism. That is the least you can do. In the, I think it was 1960s or early 70s, there was the early investigators, scientists that went into mental institutions, and they did a simple nutritional analysis of the schizophrenic patients. And the ones that had major nutritional deficiencies with B vitamins and any other vitamins, they were given high doses and they got better. This is, you can go on PubMed and look up this research, right? It's been done prior. So Obviously, if the growing body has depleted nutritionally, mitochondria is not generating proper energy, how are you supposed to heal? You have infections that are attacking the cranial nerves in the brain. How is the child supposed to chew? How is the child supposed to have strong muscles to be able to speak? I mean, the child can't even chew properly. How do you expect this child to speak? And honestly, when you look at the labs and all the pain and suffering this child is going through, you will realize that take your goals for speech, put it on the back burner. Take the goals for health, bring it to the front. Let the health get better, and then you will see that the language comes along. Okay, will 100% of children speak? No. Nobody gets better 100%. Some it could be speech could be limited. Some it could be that, social interaction is limited. Whatever, nobody recovers 100% or whatever the deficit might be. Some, like, my son might have musculoskeletal, like arthritis, permanent issues. But isn't that better than lifetime of autism? Yes. You can become a productive member of society, get educated, have a job, have your family, and we can leave this world, feeling
In peace.
in
Exactly.
peace, in peace for our children. Yes, we're not going to haunt our children, after we are gone, like, really worrying about their health. And we can go in peace. Exactly. We can move on to the next level. So that is what it is. Scientifically speaking, the Broca's and Wernicke's speech area in the brain, 100% of children that I have treated, the nonverbal communication has multiplied amazingly, right? In multiple languages sometimes, right? You have a child that will understand 3, 4, 5-step commands. You go here, do this, after that is done, come on over here, bring it. This is a huge improvement from someone with autism, like, in their own world. So the nonverbal communication, 100% of children has been phenomenal, right, on the herbal protocol. The verbal communication is understand that all motor skills are connected to the thalamus, hypothalamus, and basal ganglia in the brain. Understand the science, moms and dads. There is no miracles because there are so many connections that go from the basal ganglia. Now, mold will affect your hypothalamus. That is how it affects your pituitary, and the hormonal disruption happens. So hypothalamus is affected. The mold, as well as pandas, they cause inflammation and damage. The nuclei become small in the basal ganglia. That is your motor center in the brain. And the amygdala, that is your social cognition communication center. So, if you're saying that your child, some children, they develop verbal skills for at home, but when they are socially, they are still inappropriate. Give them time. It takes time. Now, the BioNexus speech protocol, the speech blend, the neuro essential oil blend, the calm and focus support, these are the 3 pillars of the BioNexus speech protocol, these 3 blends. Again, 100% of children, people, I should say, with autism that have been put on the speech protocol at the right time, we've seen actual words, even in a 27-year-old.
Wow, that's super hopeful, Dr. Dashore. I'm sure that the parents watching feel very grateful to have all this information and to receive hope from you.
Of course. No, my pleasure. You mentioned sensory. Now, the
Yes.
thalamus, right? The thalamus has close connections with the hypothalamus. Now, the thalamus is known as the sensory relay station in the brain. And when those connections are affected, of course, your child will have sensory issues. One of my goals is to create a custom, not custom, a different sensory approach that is applicable, because I've been sensory integration certified, board certified for so many years now. And it's a beautiful program that Dr. Jane back in the day came up with, right brain, left brain integration, and so many beautiful skills that are required. Now, the basis of speech and language can be found in higher level sensory integration, body awareness, environmental awareness, position in space, right? All of these connections, the speed of response. So specific sensory treatment modalities are required for specific stage of recovery of a child on the spectrum and any other child with sensory integration issues. And it can all be coordinated back with his status with his labs. If a child has, say, for example, in the early stages of PANS and mold, if you try to go ahead and try to give them the higher level of sensory integration, just because you have a child in your clinic and you're trying to, demonstrate to the parents how hard you're working with the child, it is false hope. It'll be frustrating for you as a therapist, because you will see that, children diagnosed with autism that have PANS, PANDAS are very bright, very smart kids. However, they will learn what you're teaching them pretty quickly, but they will not be able to retain or reproduce the next time because you are a bit too advanced for them. Right, yeah, the foundation sensory was not laid out. If you have a child who doesn't have neurological line, for example, he will need a different sensory integration approach because he has that advantage, versus a child that does have neural Lyme. Like my son had stage 3 neurological Lyme disease. So I was giving him sensory. I even have photographs. Well, actually, sensory integration is fun. I had a whole sensory gym, because that was part of my office and practice. And we were doing this every single day for Brian. And he's learning at a remarkable pace, but nothing is carrying forward. So that was the frustration. And, of course, later on I found out. So I think sensory integration needs to move to that next level of, the therapists understanding what stage they are, what stage the child is in, and approaching, and building bridges instead of just bombarding the child's body with, oh, I got to put electrodes on the brain. There are some protocols that go for that. For goodness sake, why are you directly stimulating the brain when the brain is already on fire? So I have to integrate the left and right part of the brain. Well, the brain is not the only organ that is affected in an autistic child, in a special needs child. There is the gut-brain connection. At the very least, investigate the gut, clean out the gut, see what is happening, and then try to work with the brain. It's just, I've got parents who travel from many different countries to the US because they have these brain stimulation, the right-left programs, IVIGs every 2 weeks, I mean, every 2 months. Like, it is really sad. It's sad to see, and then they are housed in a house that is moldy. So
It's because they don't know any
they
better.
don't know
Like
any better.
they,
That
they
is
we
true.
we are all in that situation.
That
So
is
thank you
true.
so much for bringing some light for us today.
Of course, it is enormous amount of pitfalls to overcome, to be aware when you are in a very stressful situation, trying to help your child. And it is important to take a step back, pause, and give yourself time. There is nothing that can happen in 6 months. You have to give your child a few years to recover his neurological system, other systems that are affected. You mentioned going into facilities for these Band-Aid treatments out there, right? I can't tell you, when I took Brian for speech therapy, for what is that called? Social skills therapy, etc. Some of them were in the basement, obviously moldy, environmental contamination. I was taking him to special classes, right, for tutoring. And they had this really new paint smell, new carpet smell. It's just mind-boggling. It's just, there's so many things that you have to be careful when you are trying to help your child. That is why root cause, elimination of root causes is so important before you try to, go at the higher level. Oh, I got to do the right and left brain. No, you don't. You have
Yeah.
to work at the root causes first.
And speaking of the root causes, if you don't mind, Dr. Dashore, I have one last question for you for this podcast. We hear so much talking about diet, gluten-free, casein-free, sugar-free. We all heard this. Can you please elaborate a bit on that?
Your question is,
Yeah, like how important is the diet for our children? Because I hear many parents saying, "Well, I've been on this diet, but I haven't seen any difference, so I just decided that it's more important for him to eat a bit of everything
right.
rather than being a picky eater." So, what is your opinion on that? Like, is it better to keep him on a healthier diet? Or is it better to be off the picky eating sort of label? It's confusing as a parent. You don't really know what's best.
Yes, I hear you. Okay. When you try a diet, once again, don't expect a magic pill. Some children make visible gains, being gluten-free, dairy-free, no processed food, eating simple homemade meals, right? Reading the labels. Reading the labels is very important. Organic, as much as possible, is very important. Nothing processed. If it doesn't come from nature, don't eat it. Like eating grapes is very different from drinking grape juice. Eating
Yeah.
Eating an orange is day and night different from drinking fresh squeezed orange juice. Even if it is fresh squeezed 2 minutes ago, it is nothing but carbs and sugar. If you eat an orange, the pulp, the membranes contain what? They contain fiber. And that fiber, Mother Nature has put in there so it balances out the natural sugars in the fruit. So your insulin spikes are not crazy. You don't get hyperactivity, you don't get inflammation. That is the difference, right? So if nature doesn't make it, don't eat it. Don't give it to your child. Okay, nothing processed, simple, home cooked, gluten-free, dairy-free. After the diagnosis, yes, it is very important to try out the diet. If you're saying you did not see any difference from the diet, what does that mean? That means that, number one, it's guaranteed that the diet will reduce inflammation. Absolutely, you do before and after labs, it will reduce inflammation, right? However, if the root cause of inflammation is still living and thriving, the inflammation is still growing beyond the capability of the reduction. Say, for example, you are getting 100 units of inflammation in the child every day. You go on the diet. The diet in the beginning will reduce 50 units of inflammation, right? You haven't seen your child with 50 units of inflammation reduced, 50% reduced inflammation. Of course, you'll see benefit. Oh, wow, there is some benefit here. So that motivates you to go on. And then your child keeps getting 100 units of inflammation every single day because you haven't investigated the root causes, you haven't mitigated your environment. Then those 50 units that are being handled by the diet, they don't seem much any longer. And that's when you're like, oh, diet is not working. Okay, I don't blame the parents. That seems logical, right? We tried. It's really, really hard. All the other kids are eating whatever. His cousins are eating whatever. Everyone calls me crazy. I'm working so hard. I already have enough guilt and stress and whatnot. That's what it is. You have not investigated properly. But the diet is a good start. I could go on because, many people might have heard about the lectin pathway. Lectin
Yes.
pathway is an inflammation pathway in the body. Okay, it's an inflammatory pathway. Now, what is the best known and most dangerous lectin in the world? Gluten.
Okay.
Even organic gluten. So it is the one thing you can do to help your child, even if you don't know any better, anything more, is to get started on the diet and start reducing inflammation. Same thing. Many people ask me, I can't afford to move to a new house. I'm doing my best to clean and remediate my moldy house. What's the point of treatment? I'm here. Same thing. It's important to start the treatment so you can remove the old toxins and effects of the old toxins that have already collected in the body. I understand more toxins will be coming in, but at least things are not getting worse where you end up with, major issues like ulcerative colitis and paralysis and cancer and and leukemias. And it's quite common that when there's chronic inflammation, you don't see these. You do see these other diagnoses come into play.
And I also wanted us to talk a little bit about how to create a cleaner environment in our houses. But I remember you dedicated a full podcast on that. So maybe if I may suggest that we link it to this one and we let parents actually get full advice.
Yes, that is fine. That makes sense. Now, for those watching again, the YouTube podcast handle is BioNexus Health USA. So if you go on the YouTube search bar and you search for BioNexus environment or environmental toxins, that podcast will come up and any related podcast will come up as well. And we'll also, link to it here as well. I should remind my IT person. I have a new IT person to make sure to link the appropriate podcasts here. But yes, yeah, that's what we'll do. No worries. And I'm, really, it's important to bring awareness to all of these different topics because it's an overwhelming journey for parents.
Yes, it is. And I would like to thank you very much, Dr. Dashore, for taking your time to enlighten us, to empower us. Because I really, really hope that parents who actually watch this 3 parts now podcast, this is
Yes.
how they're gonna feel, going from hopeless to actually empowered. That was a bit my goal and my hope for them when you agreed to do this podcast. Because it's very important to stay strong in this journey, to understand you are not alone, and to understand that there are resources out there. It's just a matter of time before you find them. And for instance, it took me quite a few years before I was able to find you. So I hope that with this podcast, maybe many parents are gonna, reduce that those 6 years that it took me to find you, maybe to much less, maybe to 6 months or 1 year. And this is time gained when their children are gonna be, thriving, where they're not gonna have to suffer like my son had to suffer for those extra years before I actually met you.
Yes, yes, I couldn't agree more that earlier the better. But even if your child is older, not a problem. Don't let anyone tell you that, earlier is always the better. We have children that are much older and that have made fantastic gains.
So it's never too late.
It's never too late. Don't ever lose hope. And, honestly, while you're looking after your child, look after your own health as well. It's very important.
Yeah, indeed.
Sorry about that. There was a little bit of a glitch, but yes, it is important for parents to look after their own health, because God forbid, if these health issues, environmental issues catch up with you while your child is still recovering, then it adds to the stress in the family. That's when uh, other adverse events can occur. Many special needs families break up just because of the stress associated with being a special needs family, and mom and dad usually put their own health needs on the back burner.
Most of the times. Most of the time when I talk to parents, they always say, well, first let me treat my child and then I'll deal with myself or with my own issues.
Yes, what I do, I have a bundle for moms and dads, the very basic immune support that mom, I believe it's just 3 or 4 items that the herbal blends that mom and dad should be on to not, to just support their body. And another easy way is go on the gluten-free, dairy-free, fantastic diet that you have your child on. Why wouldn't you eat that? Right? Why are you not taking advantage of all the hard work that you're putting? It's easy to, while you're cooking for one portion, you can make 3 portions, you can make 4 portions. We transitioned to cooking for the whole family, and it was, in fact, I had to tell dad, don't you dare bring any gluten or cookies or your silly snacks home. We have to give Brian the best chance at this. And later on, dad realized that the bloating in the belly, the headaches, the weight gain around the middle, what they call as beer bellies, not happening
Yeah.
anymore. So, and he has more energy. He reduced his coffee drinking. So dads can be tough sometimes, but dad was on board after that, So definitely stay on at least the same diet, the beautiful diet that you're giving your child. If you think that the diet you're giving your child is yucky, of course the child is going to think that, right? So make an effort into creating a beautiful menu for your child. Understand that once the gut improves, the picky eating improves. I have so many children that went from eating what? The worst I had was, unfortunately, one little girl would just eat apples and pears, literally all day, nothing else. And then I had another one eating McDonald's, God forbid, oh God, chicken nuggets and fries all day.
Well, see, that for me is much worse than apple and pears all day.
Yes, yes, I agree. Yes, but it's hard. Like mom is like, what do I do? You know, all she wants is that. So those children went on to eating vegetables and fruits and, you know, beautiful like soups and right, and meat and fish and eggs. And it's just, the child is going to improve. You have no idea the kind of burning and pain, you know, many of these gut infections and toxins cause. There is a reason. Additionally, introduce your child right from the get-go to healthy foods. Why even bother? You know, I give this very important recommendation to mothers who've gone through my pre-pregnancy program, that why even introduce the child to fast food? Why? Why introduce the child to sugar and cookies? And what the heck is that? You know, my son did not know about cookies and chocolate and sugar till he started first grade, because then they had the school parties and whatnot. You know, why? There's no need. There's, you know, you just need a good, healthy foundation diet. Introduce them to vegetables, fruit, you know, a good, wholesome foods right at the start. So many parents only have themselves to blame because they want to go and eat out and they want their child right there, and they hand them a few, you know, French fries or fries, and they're like, okay, he's quiet over there. You know, here's some fries. Here's some crunchy junk. Here's the iPhone. Be quiet and let us enjoy the dinner. Okay, well, that is, you know where the problem is.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. So we have a fantastic 3-series podcast. One last thing is, again, for the environment, right? Or if you're moving and whatnot, BioNexus Health, YouTube search bar, search for BioNexus Health, apartment hunting. That is one podcast that talks about what to look for in the new house, not just an apartment, but in the new house that you're planning. Most people move from one flat to another, or if it's a full house, same principles will apply. Then BioNexus Health deep cleaning. I think that's what Andrea mentioned. So deep cleaning podcast is there. Additionally, air conditioning maintenance. So air
and washing machine maintenance as well.
A washing machine maintenance, yes.
Yeah,
washing
very
machine
important
podcast.
as well. Yeah.
Yes. So these are household important things for mothers that you can do right away, even before you see me.
Exactly.
All right. So Andrea, it's 11:11 right now. So, you know, I'm going to take a pause here and, you know, let everybody digest the information.
Exactly. Let the information sink in.
Okay, so, well, gosh, that was a marathon session of 3 different parts. So be sure to watch part 1, 2, and 3. And I will see you guys at the next episode of Autism Uprooted. Take good care. Namaste.
Thank you for joining Master Herbalist Dr. Jodi A. Dashore, Director of the BioNexus Health Clinic and BioNexus Herbals, on the BioNexus Health Podcast, where we explore and share information and stories about recovering and healing from chronic and environmental illnesses such as mold biotoxin illness, Lyme disease, autism spectrum disorder, fatigue, Crohn's and colitis, mast cell activation syndrome, PANS, and more. Please help us grow our message by subscribing to our podcast channel and sharing the podcast on your social networks. For more information, visit BioNexusHealth.com.
Information within this video, audio, or text, collectively known as the podcast, has not been reviewed by the FDA. Nothing within the podcast is intended as or should be construed as medical advice. Information is for general informational and educational purposes only. Consumers of the podcast should consult with their healthcare practitioners for medical recommendations. Seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider. Do not disregard the advice of a healthcare provider based on any information from the podcast. The information within the podcast may contain information concerning dietary supplements or over-the-counter products that are not drugs. Our dietary supplement products are not intended for use as a means to cure, treat, prevent, diagnose, or mitigate any disease or other medical or abnormal condition.